Hello again. It is Sam Murphy and Greg Clownzer. We are here talking about the three principles and realizations, insights, and understanding. And Greg, you got to help me because, okay, so the three principles. Intellectually, I get it. I'm an intelligent person, and I'm like, I can read that. I get what it means. And I know that there's more to it, and we're going to get into that, and you're going to help me deepen maybe my understanding or weave it into my life. But I think so often people will discount something. I get it intellectually. I know it. It's over. It's done. And so really I'd love for you to highlight your experience with this, right? And me too, being somebody that's a doer, it's actually a little bit frustrating. I'm like, okay, what's next? And I feel that it's more nothing. This is very uncomfortable for me. What do you mean? But also seeing that people that I respect and admire, yourself and some of your mentors and other people out there, that this, I believe, is a powerful, I don't know if we would call it practice or I guess principles that lead to a better understanding and, can enhance everything that we're talking about, state of mind and, just shifting paradigms and all this. So help me with, where do I go next?
Yeah.
Get it, but I don't get it.
Great. So, like I said in one of the earlier videos, I think, a 5-year-old can get this intellectually. But it's for adults or anybody listening, it's entertaining at best and not very practical. So in this video, we're going to try to ground this and make it really real for people and help maybe pique their curiosity and help them understand it a little bit better. So I want to start off with maybe a metaphor about understanding, first of all, in that you can never give another person understanding. They have to get it for themselves. And the same being with realization or insight. You can't give it to anybody else. They can only get it for themselves. All right? And so the metaphor is, and I often tell this, at least from my point of view, my son was a late bloomer when it came to riding a bike. All right? And so we took the training wheels off, and he was out there in the drive, trying to ride his bike and crashing and falling and like me, probably when I was that age, very frustrated and very outspoken. And so when he would crash, he would kick his bike and say, "A stupid bike, I hate this bike." That's the outside in. The reason that he can't ride a bike is because of the bike. It's an excuse. It's the circumstances, right? And then, the second place he would go is, "I'm stupid, I hate myself." And so, blaming, looking for something to blame or someone to blame, And that's very much what these principles kind of point to as human beings. That's often our tendencies, is circumstances and looking for somebody to blame, And, as his parent, and probably what you can see here is that, there wasn't anything wrong with his bike, and there wasn't anything wrong with him, and he's not stupid or dumb. He just didn't understand something. He didn't understand balance. Okay? And as a parent, as much as you want to give them that balance, that insight to balance, you can't do it.
Right.
At best, what you can do is not get overly involved with his self-talk and talk him and say there's nothing wrong with the bike, and you don't try to pull him over and say, "Oh, you just need to love yourself," No, it's pointless. What you do is you just continue to not get too involved in that and create a safe place and keep him on the bike as long as you can. And at some point, something's going to click for him, And that's what insight, realization, and understanding is. And what's really powerful about the conversation that we're in and from a coaching and really helping people is, from my point of view, what's really helpful is helping people have insights, understanding, and realizations, because then they're free to ride their bike wherever they want. Okay? Right. And they're really free. And so that's what this is all about, is helping people have realizations and understanding, and just staying in the conversation long enough for them to have an insight and to see something. Okay? So what I'd like to do is maybe you share something, that you're struggling with your business, and so we can get you on the bike, and see if we can keep you on the bike and see if there's some sort of insight or understanding that can show up. And it may or may not. I'm not attached to you learning how to ride the bike right now, but we're gonna give a go at it. Okay?
Okay, great. Let's ride the bike. So for me, business-wise, I would say right now, biggest frustration is I haven't been doing the marketing or really giving the business the love and attention on the growth side of things that I could. And I have felt like I've been a bit distracted or derailed with some personal stuff.
Okay. So like personal stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So you said derailed by that? What do you mean derailed?
I guess just distracted. The energy kind of went here and the focus went there, and this being the business kind of stayed as it was.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what do you make of the fact that the personal stuff's getting so much energy over the business? What do you make of that?
For me, I guess it was the priority choice at the time. And kind of is what it is, but it's time for me to change.
Okay. So a lot of people's priorities change in life. Okay. What do you make of the fact that some people are more resilient and can just make that change and that correction, and other people having a difficult time making that correction?
I guess a lot of it would lead back to what we were discussing earlier, right? What's that blueprint or your, I guess, state of mind to be able to say, oops.
Yeah.
Here I go, rather than punishing myself for it or sitting and stewing and eating more time.
Okay. So what, based on the conversation we've been in so far, the principles, universal mind, consciousness, and thought, based on your current understanding of that, whether it be intellectual or whatever it is, how do you see your situation in light of that?
I guess one of my situations, I see it that if I'm focusing on the negative or what am I thinking or feeling based on a current circumstance, what am I going to produce more of, right? I guess if I feel shitty, the mood is shitty, the results are shitty.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And how does that tie together? And then a question it brings for me is, okay, so I get that the thoughts and feelings dictate that, and knowing that our thoughts are transitory, when I know that I'm having one that isn't serving me, do I not think about it? Do I think about not thinking about it? Because that's ultimately thinking about it. Or do I try to divert and focus on,
Okay. So are you saying that you're seeing that your thought has something to do with your ability to shift priorities?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
You are. So you're seeing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. And so I would call that an insight.
Okay.
And, I think what, for people here watching, is that having insights is pretty normal. That's how we evolve as human beings. We have insights. We figure out, if we chisel a stone round, that now that's going to move. We have an insight into that would simplify life in some way. So we have an insight into that. Once that wheel's developed, we never go back to doing things how we did them before. And kind of like the bicycle analogy, once you learn how to ride a bike, you don't go backwards. That it bumps up our level of consciousness and understanding, and as a result, whatever was previously difficult is now easy. Okay, so you could say that, and not to take this the wrong way, but for all of us, when we're struggling, it's just pointing to the fact that our understanding, or we're misunderstanding something, our understanding isn't deep enough. And somehow, I think that's a really kind way to look at it. Okay? Because we stop blaming people and circumstances for why things are. we don't have the need to blame ourselves for why the things they are. It's just that we're stuck in a paradigm, and of course I would have that performance and results if I was viewing life that way and stuck in that performance. And so, in some way, there's a sense of kindness in that you're just one thought away from a realization, a deeper understanding that could really, truly transform your life, your business, your relationships, everything.
Right.
And for me, that's really good news.
True.
Yeah. So, thoughts or comments about any of that?
I think for me, you pointing out, okay, that is an insight, because being a doer, and I'm a bit harsh on myself, I'm like, well, that's not very big, right? Doesn't feel profound, doesn't feel, so I guess if I'm hearing you right, kind of trusting in the process, that will ultimately be a bigger thing, or be more impactful than I realize in this moment. Because to me, it almost feels like common sense. Like, maybe it's an insight, but maybe I'm questioning myself of just, well, of course, of course it's that.
Yeah. Well, I often use the analogy that if a prisoner wants to get free, they first have to acknowledge that they're in prison.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so it's the same with our thinking. If we're suffering, and we have to acknowledge that I'm creating my own experience in the moment, and my thinking has something to do with it. And just that realization is kind of like the prisoner waking up to the fact that, holy smokes, I'm in prison.
Right.
That's an insight, at least that's how I see it. So you've had an insight that, for lack of better reason, maybe the analogy is that you have an insight that I'm imprisoned by my thinking. I had no idea. Right? Like my thoughts are getting the best of me, and I hadn't seen that before.
Right.
Okay? Now, that becomes hopeful as far as I'm concerned, And the deeper you start to realize the fact that you're in prison, you see that that's not necessarily the experience that you want, and so you start to become more and more curious about freedom. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so, you start to see that when you fight the other inmates and you habitually act out in certain ways, that it lengthens your prison stay.
Right.
Right? And you could say that the better your behavior and the less you react to your circumstances, and the less that you react to the other inmates, the quicker your release.
Right.
Okay. So what are you seeing? I see you kind of nodding. So what are you seeing in that metaphor or analogy? What are you seeing for yourself?
I guess a big thing is just embrace it. I'm the very doer. Let's go. And it's really just realize it, have that awareness, and then relax into it and stop trying to control everything.
Yeah. Got it. Well, kind of going with the prisoner metaphors, these principles have been introduced to prisons, okay? And that there are many prisoners who have no hope of getting out, that are experiencing more freedom behind bars than they ever had in their whole life.
Which is so fascinating.
It's really fascinating. And one of the prisoners, what he said if I realized what I know now about these principles, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
And what he said was he didn't know that he didn't have to act on his thinking or react to his thinking. And when he had a violent thought, he habitually reacted or acted out on that thought. Okay? Now, what happens is the people I work with say, well, that's really easy to see. But they don't see the fact that they're no different than that man behind bars and they're actually imprisoned themselves because they're reacting and acting out on their thinking. Okay?
Right.
So for someone who's a real doer, they have a thought, and before you know it, they're reacting to that thought of, I got to do something with this.
Right.
All right? Now, I don't know about you, but if I had this overwhelming feeling that I had to act or do something with every thought, that would put me in a perpetual feeling of anxiety and overwhelm.
Right.
Okay?
Definitely.
All right. Does that relate to you at all?
Probably in the past.
In the past? Okay.
So maybe I gained partial insights before knowing the insights, you know, but
yeah.
I definitely used to operate in a state of what has to be done, what needs to be done, what needs to be going. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm overwhelmed, I'm going to take a nap.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. What you just pointed to is it's exhausting.
Right.
You know, it'd be like playing ping pong nonstop, you know, and having to keep your eye on the ball and always rallying those thoughts. And then you think, you know, now there's 3 or 4 ping pongs going, and, you know, your attention, that would be just exhausting. Right? And I think that's the innocent misunderstanding when people don't understand their thinking, and that they don't have to get involved in it, that they actually have choice in the matter. Okay? Now, I'll share this with you, and I didn't like this when I first came to this understanding. As a self-proclaimed control freak, okay, and anybody listening here that can relate, is that I didn't like the idea that I don't have any controls of my thoughts. Okay? But the more I sat with it, I really came to realize that I have no control over my thoughts.
Okay.
They just come. Now, what I do have control over is I have free will.
Okay.
And I have control over which thoughts I give energy to and which I don't. Okay? And that's really empowering. Okay? And when a thought comes up that is an insecure thought, or a thought that puts me in a low mood or a low state of mind, remember I said there's a built-in design to the system? Mm-hmm. Okay? Well, the built-in design is that I'm in a low mood, and I know that I'm always feeling my thinking, okay? And the built-in design is simply telling me that my thinking is not right. Okay? So if you're in a low mood, if you're getting angst, if you're feeling stuck in business or whatever, it just means that your thinking is off.
Okay.
Okay? And chances are you've got involved in your thinking like that prisoner. You're reacting to it or trying to do something or manage it, all right? And if you just understood the fact that if you do nothing with the thought, the nature of thought is transitory and it'll pass, okay? We often talk about putting a period at the end of the thought rather than a comma, a question mark, or an exclamation point, and creating an essay around the original thought. Like there's an original thought, if we can just put a period on it, instead of multiplying the thought and creating an essay and a story around it,
okay,
it passes. And then when it passes, there's a space or an openness. And the way I see it is that's how we access our inner genius, is through the space between thoughts. Okay? You and I were talking a little bit offline about the world of form and formlessness, and you know, in the last video we talked about looking in the direction of the formless versus the form, and so that's a really different idea for most people. But when we put our attention on that which is formless, or this invisible energy behind all life, is what we're really doing is we're plugging into the universal intelligence, okay, and having access to common sense and wisdom and divine intervention, if you will. So, so that's what I have to say.
All right. Well, I like that, and I feel that definitely helps me have, I think, a better, more practical understanding. Because again, it comes from this. Okay, I want to know it. I want to grasp it. What do I do?
Yeah.
What does it mean? And so that really, I think, for everybody out there listening and watching, will help to break that down into kind of a practical, and I think the analogy with the prisoner, right? You are in control and have the ability to react or engage or interact with those thoughts. Don't let them go.
Yeah, yeah. So I think for anybody listening, and yourself included, what helped me is that once I started to see these principles, I'd go through my day. I just live life. And I start to notice, when I start to get agitated or, pissed off or fearful or feeling threatened. Okay? And what started to dawn on me was the fact of these principles that in order for me to feel depressed or down or anxious, I started to see that I was living in flatland. I started to see that I was looking to blame it on someone else. I wasn't taking 100% ownership for creating my own experience. So anybody listening here, as you go back out into life and you're driving down the freeway and somebody cuts you off and you're enraged all of a sudden, or there's an event and you don't get invited to and you feel betrayed, whatever the life circuit, you start to notice the real juice in all of this is you start to see that I've got some thinking that's going on that's creating this, and it's not about not getting invited to the party, or it's not about this guy cutting me off, but you start to see that I'm creating my experience in the moment, not the guy that just cut me off, not the client that was just late for a call, not the person who is 30 days behind their payments, for the business. You start to realize the fact that I'm generating that experience.
Right.
Now, for anybody listening, that's a big deal. And if all you've got out of this so far is to start to take 100% responsibility that you are the creator of your own experience in the moment via your thoughts and your feelings, that insight and revelation in and of itself has the power to change and transform your life.
Absolutely. And that's amazing. And I think, I'm sure that there's lots more that everybody out there watching will get from it. But yes, leaving them with that one juicy tidbit that's, if nothing else, take this and it can transform your life, is incredibly powerful.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Well, thank you so much for that. And
Thank
you for sharing and helping to deepen my understanding of this conversation and helping me with realizations and insights and understanding, and look forward to more in the future. And thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for watching and being part of this conversation. And if you'd like to learn more, feel free to reach out to Sam or myself, and we'd love to keep you in the conversation and help you deepen your understanding.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thanks.